This is the story called Benjy's Boat Trip. Benjy was a brown dog with long ears and a short tail. He lived with Father, Mother, Linda, and Jimmy. Every summer, they all took a trip together. Sometimes they went to the country. And sometimes they went to the lake. Benjy loved trips. One day, Mother said, "We're going to take a boat trip this summer." "Is Benjy coming too?" said Jimmy. "Not this time," said Father. "No pets allowed. He'll stay with Aunt Mary." "Poor Benjy," said Linda. "He'll be lonely." The day of the trip came. Aunt Mary and Benjy went with the family to the ship. Everybody on board was happy, except Benjy and the children. Then, "Visitors ashore," came over the loudspeaker, and Aunt Mary and Benjy had to leave the ship. All the way to Aunt Mary's house, Benjy looked out the car window. That evening, he didn't eat any supper. He sat right beside the door all night. In the morning, Aunt Mary took Benjy for a walk. Right away, he slipped out of his collar and ran straight across town to the waterfront. A big ship named the Ocean Queen was there. It looked just like the ship his family was on. Benjy ran up the gangway. No one noticed him. No one, that is, except Ginger, the ship's cat. She thought the Ocean Queen was her ship. Quick as lightning, she tore after Benjy. He ran behind a big box, jumped into a hole, and landed below deck. He hid in a storeroom. Ginger looked and looked for Benjy, but she couldn't find him. Down in the storeroom, it was dark and quiet. Benjy was tired. Soon, he fell asleep. In a few hours, the Ocean Queen was ready to sail. It moved slowly away from the dock. Its whistle blew, and tugs tooted. But Benjy didn't hear a thing. He was still asleep in the storeroom. After a while, the rolling of the ship woke Benjy. He went up on deck. There was water all around. The ship was at sea. Benjy looked and looked for his family, but he couldn't find them. It was the wrong ship. Benjy felt terrible. He heard the captain say to the mate, "By golly, there's a dog on board." "He'd better look out," said the mate. "Here comes Ginger. Wait till she sees him." Benjy didn't wait. He ran back to the storeroom and hid. He was there for a long time. He felt very lonely and hungry, too. Then he smelled something cooking. It was so good that he forgot about Ginger. He crept out of the storeroom and followed the smell to the ship's kitchen. There he found the cook making hamburgers. "Hi," said the cook. "So you're the dog that came on board. You look just like my little dog at home." He gave Benjy a hamburger. Benjy was just going to take a bite when he heard a yowl. It was Ginger. He raced out of the kitchen, up some steps, and into a cabin. It was the captain's. Benjy ran across the bed. Ginger followed. "Get out of here!" roared the captain. Ginger ran out the door, down some steps, across the deck, and up the mast. Benjy jumped out the porthole onto the deck. He ran back to the kitchen, hungrier than ever. "Come with me," said the cook, and he took Benjy to his cabin. "You'll be safe from Ginger here," he said. Benjy had a big supper and went to sleep on the cook's bed. He slept well all night. In the morning after breakfast, Benjy came up on deck. He watched the cook feed scraps to the screaming gulls. "Those gulls sound just like cats," said the cook. "Say, where's Ginger? I haven't seen her today." He went back to the kitchen, and Benjy lay down to take a snooze. He was almost asleep when he heard a cry. He looked around. The gulls were all gone. Then he heard the cry again. He looked up. He could see something way up on the mast. It was Ginger. She'd been at the top of the mast the whole night, afraid to come down. Benjy barked and barked. The mate came along. "What's the matter?" he said. Benjy looked up at the mast and whined. The mate looked with his binoculars. "So that's where Ginger is," he said. He took off his hat and put down his binoculars. He climbed to the top of the mast, got hold of Ginger, and put her inside his shirt. Then he climbed down again. "Ginger," he said, "you're very lucky to have this little dog as a friend." Poor Ginger just gave a weak meow. And she never chased Benjy again. From that day on, Ginger was a changed cat. Benjy enjoyed the rest of the trip. He spent every morning with the mate on deck and every night with the cook in his cabin. After a couple of weeks, the Ocean Queen returned to Benjy's hometown. As the ship came into the harbor, Benjy could see all the places he knew. He ran back and forth on the deck and barked. He'd had a wonderful time on the ship, but now he was ready to go home. The minute the gangway was down, he ran off the ship and along the dock. The cook and Ginger saw him go. "Goodbye, doggy," shouted the cook. Benjy stopped, looked around, and barked. Then he ran straight home. The family was very, very happy to see Benjy. "Aunt Mary thought you were lost," said Linda. "She cried and cried." "But we knew you'd come back," said Jimmy. "Look," said Linda, "we brought you a present." It was a toy ship that went round and round in the bathtub. Benjy loved it. It reminded him of the Ocean Queen. On a walk a few weeks later, the children and Benjy heard a ship's whistle. Benjy pulled the children all the way to the waterfront. There was the Ocean Queen leaving the dock, and the cook and Ginger were on deck. Benjy jumped up and down and barked. "Benjy sure likes ships," said Jimmy. "On our next boat trip, he's coming too," said Linda. "We won't leave him behind again." And they didn't. That was the story called Benjy's Boat Trip. The person who wrote the book and drew the pictures was Margaret Bloy Graham.